Bathroom tile and floor projects can be in areas exposed to extreme amounts of water on a daily basis. These areas need waterproofing before installing final finishes. BlueMax Tile and Floor is UPC certified and will provide an underlying layer of waterproofing protection to extend the life and preserve the integrity of floors and walls. BlueMax Tile and Floor is easy to buy and easy to apply. The first step in installing an Ames BlueMax waterproof shower membrane is to gather the tools and materials you'll need to complete the job. The materials include a shop vacuum, a clean bucket of water with several rags, BlueMax trowel grade material, BlueMax waterproofing material, mill gauge reinforcing mesh, a pair of fabric scissors to cut the mesh, a stiff putty knife, screwdriver, several 4 or 5 quart containers, a 4-inch mini roller and cover, a chip brush, small level and measuring tape, handheld surface thermometer, an N95 face mask, and also a knee cushion or strap-on knee pads. From the work area, inspect the shower surfaces for protruding or missing fasteners. Tighten any as needed. Also, inspect for loose or broken backer board and the presence of mold or mildew on walls or sheathing. This can occur due to extended exposure to the elements during construction or other pre-existing conditions such as leaks. Look for excessive gaps between backer board panels at intersections to other adjacent items and at cutouts for water pipes and shower heads. Then, check for dried crumbs or protrusions of mortar slag stuck on the surface of the shower base. If any are sticking up, scrape them off with a stiff-bladed scraper. Notice the slope in the floor to the drain. It must meet the requirements of building and plumbing codes for adequate slope-to-drain ratios under all shower membranes. Currently, this requirement is not less than 1/4 inch per foot and not more than 1/2 inch per foot slope. Too little slope can slow drainage, while too much slope can create slip hazards. Cementitious sloping material is readily available from your local building materials supply store and is easy to apply. Ames recommends you consult your local building codes for clarification on this requirement and any changes to the code. Finally, check the temperature to ensure that the air temp is within the recommended range of 50 to 90 degrees Fahrenheit. We checked surface temperature earlier and both are within range. Before installation of any materials, clean the substrate. Includes removing dirt, contaminants, and debris from existing surfaces. Loose contaminants that could prohibit proper adhesion of the Ames BlueMax tile and floor membrane can be removed with a duster brush or vacuum. Now that the shower is clean and the inspection of surfaces completed, make sure you have all the materials and tools ready and close by to avoid any delays once you start the installation. Start with the detail work by pre-filling joints over 1/8 inches between wall panels. This is done to prevent excessive air gaps and to provide additional support for the reinforcing mesh. By using a trowel-grade BlueMax product, we're able to pre-fill the joints and immediately proceed with the detail reinforcing work. Next, move on to install BlueMax with reinforcing mesh at corners, between walls, and between the walls and floor. Open a container of BlueMax tile and floor and pour a quart or 2 into the 4 to 5 quart container. Pro tip: place the roller and cover inside the container with the roller cover hanging on the inside. This keeps the roller from gobbing up with excessive material until you're ready to use it. A wet band of BlueMax material is rolled out on each wall in a path wider than the reinforcing mesh to ensure full adhesive contact between the mesh and the BlueMax. Pre-coat an area you feel comfortable with, allowing you sufficient time to embed and smooth out the mesh while the BlueMax is still wet. The reinforcing mesh is then unrolled and cut to the desired length you can easily handle. Pro tip: Place your scissors nearby in a container of water. This keeps the scissors moist and prevents the BlueMax from getting too sticky on the scissors as the work progresses. Also, dip your hands into the water pail and use a wet rag to keep your hands moist. Do this repeatedly as you work to avoid getting sticky fingers. Slightly pre-fold the reinforcing mesh by holding each end and folding the mesh in half lengthwise. Pro tip: holding the mesh with a bit of tension makes this easy to do. When laying the reinforcing mesh into the wet BlueMax on one side only of the corner joint, it's much easier to straighten the mesh into place. It's then a simple movement to lay in the other folded half of the mesh onto the second side of the corner joint. If you get a wrinkle in the reinforcing mesh, lift the edge and pull the wrinkle out. You can also simply pull off a crooked piece of mesh and reposition it as needed. Pro tip: only cut mesh strips to a length you feel is comfortable and easy to work with. It's not necessary to install full strips along the entire length of a joint. You can cut shorter pieces that may be easier to work with. Be sure to overlap the mesh pieces an inch or two as you move along the joint. The areas of overlap should have sufficient material so the lapped areas bond well. After you're satisfied with the positioning of the reinforcing mesh, use the roller or your finger to smooth the mesh back into a joint. Square up the joint and prevent any rounding of the mesh in the corners. The reinforcing mesh is quite flexible and wraps around corners easily. Once the mesh starts to saturate with BlueMax material, it becomes limp and flexible. Then use a roller to finish smoothing out the reinforcing mesh into the wet BlueMax material and even up remaining material over the surface of the mesh. Once you're satisfied the mesh is fully embedded in BlueMax, move on to the next joint, repeating the process. Note that the panel-to-panel joints are installed in a similar manner to the corner reinforcing, with the BlueMax material first applied in a path wider than the reinforcing mesh. This ensures you achieve full adhesive contact between the mesh and the BlueMax. It's now time to install reinforcing mesh around the outside edges of the shower floor-to-wall connection. One side of the reinforcing will be up on the cement board, with the other side of the reinforcing strips lapping down onto the sloping mortar bed at the floor of the shower. The procedure is the same as the corner joints on the shower walls. Place reinforcing mesh embedded in BlueMax material, lapping over the drain flange on the floor drain and out onto the sloped mortar base on the floor. The fabric is installed continuously over the drain hole in the center of the plumbing flange. This fabric will be cut out later, after the membrane installation has been completed and cured. Next, install BlueMax and reinforcing mesh over a crack in the sloped floor to reinforce the crack in a similar fashion to the panel-to-panel joints on the wall. Once you're finished with the reinforcing work on the walls and floor of the shower, you have one last detail to attend to. This shower has a raised threshold at the entry and along the side of the shower, intended to receive a shower door and frame after the tile is installed. The raised threshold also needs to have the floor-to-edge connection flashed. This floor-to-edge joint is flashed with embedded mesh, just as both back wall-to-wall connections were flashed. Additionally, install material up the inside and across the top of the threshold. Note how the strip of reinforcing mesh is cut several inches longer than the width of the threshold. This allows for you to notch the mesh with your scissors so the mesh can relax around the corners of the threshold without wrinkling. Then wrap the reinforcing mesh down the outside face of the threshold slightly to seal the joint between the threshold top and the shower framing. Confirm the reinforcing mesh has covered the connection between threshold and wall at each side of the threshold. If not, add several pieces of mesh. After examining the entire area to make sure all the detail work is complete, this phase of installation is finished. It may seem like a lot of different details to remember, but take your time and follow these instructions. The process should go smoothly, and provide a fully reinforced substrate that is ready for the next step in the process, applying the BlueMax tile membrane. Begin by checking the temperature of the work area. It should be between 50 and 90 degrees Fahrenheit. Load your pump by pumping the BlueMax material through the line and gun. Pro tip: test spray on a piece of available cardboard to make sure the spray pattern is uniform. Put on a protective face mask, hair protection, and safety glasses before beginning to spray. After making several passes with the spray gun, check the mill thickness of the wet material with a wet mill gauge. The goal is to apply approximately 32 mils per coat to achieve the recommended thickness. The mill gauge has clear measurement graduations that show the thickness of the wet material. If it shows insufficient material thickness, simply apply more material and check the thickness again. A larger sprayer can deliver excellent results when applying the BlueMax material, but a small handheld airless sprayer can also be effective. This handheld sprayer has a small self-contained reservoir that holds approximately 32 ounces of material. The spray application is slightly slower due to the lower material flow rate of the smaller sprayer. Check the area being sprayed again by the wet mill gauge and spray another pass or two in order to achieve the desired wet film thickness. When spraying is completed, flush the pump with water, following the pump manufacturer's instructions. By cleaning the pump shortly after use, the pump will be clean and functional next time it's needed. As you prepare to apply the second coat of Ames BlueMax, again, check ambient temperature to verify it's within the recommended range. Also, check that the masking that was completed the previous day is still in place. Now, check the tackiness of the material applied the previous day. The membrane should be dark blue, translucent, and slightly tacky, although firm to the touch. As with the previous application, put on a face mask, hair protection, and safety glasses. It's important to note that only the shower pan membrane area needs this second coat of material to achieve the thickness of membrane required by the Uniform Plumbing Code guidelines and testing lab criteria. The upper walls do not require a second coat of the BlueMax material. Apply the second coat on the shower pan membrane area and up at least 3 inches along the walls past the top of any shower threshold elevation. This height is also a code requirement in most areas. Temperature, as well as humidity, can affect cure times, so consult the dry times chart. This chart can give you a sense of how long to allow the membrane to cure based on your project specifics. With the materials sufficiently dried, the surfaces are visually inspected to determine if any spots have been missed and that a full seal has been achieved. Next, cut out the reinforcing mesh with a sharp knife where the drain flange hole is located. Pro tip: by inserting the blade of the knife down into the drain, use the inside of the drain as a guide while cutting. Install the clamping ring onto the drain hub. This drain hub provides a mechanical seal for the membrane at the drain hub flange and provides the threaded portion of the drain for the plumber's drain cover. Place the required plumber's test plug in the floor drain opening to begin a code-required water test. With the drain plug in place, fill the shower pan membrane up to just below the top of the entry threshold. After 4 hours, return to inspect the shower pan membrane for any water loss. With no water loss, the shower membrane is ready for further installation work by other trades, such as the tile setter, then the trim work by the plumber. It's important to note that different jurisdictional building codes may require different times for a water test. They may also require a plumbing inspector observe the results of the water test when a plumbing permit is involved. As you can see, UPC certified BlueMax tile and floor is easy to apply and will provide years of protection for the floors beneath and the walls behind your beautiful new project. Call Ames Research or check online to discover more waterproofing solutions.